My name is Charles Kelley, and I'm a Latvian American. I would like to invite you to join me right now on a special walk through my Riga. We're going to see special places of historic and cultural importance. I'm going to share with you some personal memories and some interesting historical tidbits that many people don't know. And I'll show you some places that even most native Latvians haven't seen. Come, enjoy. We've now come to my favorite square in Old Riga. It's the Town Hall Square, or the Ratslaukum. And I like the word Ratslaukum. It's from the German idea of Rathaus, City Hall. And what a better description it is to describe the people who sit in the City Hall than to call them rats. But anyway, what's beautiful about this town square is the building behind me, or actually two of them, the houses of the Blackheads. These are the most beautiful new palaces or old palaces in Europe, in my estimation. You see, they were built in 1334, but they were destroyed in 1941, and then they were rebuilt in 1999. And they were rebuilt according to the old diagrams, but with new technology and new engineering. And so they're absolutely gorgeous inside and out. Why on earth would anybody call a house the House of the Blackheads? Well, it's interesting. If you go into the house, you will see many sculptures and paintings of Africans, and even next to the gate, one of the images on the front gate is a black man. Okay, that's wonderful, but what's the story? He was Mauricio, or Moritz, and he was a military leader about the 4th century or so, and this man was very venerated for his courage and for fighting on behalf of the church, and he was brave and all of these wonderful things. And then when he died, he was canonized and actually turned into a saint. So he was a warrior who became a saint. And there was a group of merchants, German merchants, who were coming back and forth here. They were part of the Hanseatic Union, which is a group of cities along great bodies of water in Northern Europe. And they built this house, and they had a patron saint, and they adopted Maurizio as their patron saint. And so they call it the House of the Blackheads, in honor of this great and courageous man. Now, you can see it's ornate, tremendous clock. It's just unbelievable. And there are sculptures up there. Most of them are of Greek mythology. There's a sculpture of St. George and the dragon. There are inscriptions in Latin. There's all sorts of symbolism here. And in the 13th, 14th, 15th century, Chamber of Commerce of Riga. It's the place where they did business. But most of the traders, the German traders, they were merchants, and they were single. So one could say they did business by day and they did pleasure by night. So this was a party place and this was a business place. If you walk inside, there's amazing art. There's murals, there's chandeliers, there's carvings, and there's even a glass floor that shows what Riga was like in the 700s, in the 800s, because underneath this cobblestone square are ruins of the civilization that lived here before there was even written records of them. It's a very interesting and a historic place. Now, just in front of the Blackhead houses is this monument to the Christmas tree, because legend has it is that the first Christmas tree in history was right here in 1510 AD. And there's a number of versions of how the Christmas tree started. Now, of course, you will have arguments from the Finns and the Czechs, or maybe the Turks, the Estonians, that they had the first Christmas tree. But of course, the Latvians are right. They had the first Christmas tree here. And there's even a legend that it was Martin Luther himself who invented, so to speak, the first Christmas tree, because he was walking in the forest, and it had just snowed, but now it was a clear sky, and the moon and the stars were sparkling on the snowy branches, and it gave him an idea to take a tree and to put candles on it and to have the first Christmas tree. Well, of course, there are many, many, many scholars, and I think most scholars believe that Martin Luther actually was never here, but it's a good story as well. Well, here I'm standing at a place that actually merges ancient history with more modern history. Let's start in 1939. And that's when there was a secret protocol signed by the Russian foreign minister, Molotov, who was famous for his cocktails, and the German foreign minister, Ribbentrop, who was hung after the Nuremberg trials. And of course, Molotov represented Stalin, Ribbentrop represented Hitler. And this secret protocol, this agreement, carved Eastern and Central Europe into Soviet and German blocs, with the agreement that the Germans won't invade the Soviet regions and the Soviets won't invade the German regions. Well, 2 weeks after it was signed, Germany invaded Poland and World War II started. Of course, France was invaded almost immediately. Very soon thereafter, in June of 1940, the Soviet Union attacked the 3 Baltic countries, and that's when Latvia was first occupied by Soviet Russia. Hitler and Stalin hated each other, they didn't trust each other, and even though they had this agreement, Hitler broke his deal, and he decided to launch something called Operation Barbarossa, which was an attack on Russia, especially Moscow and Petersburg, and some other major cities as well, like Stalingrad. And so he launched this major attack into Russia, and of course he had to come through the Baltic countries. And so in 1941, the Germans attacked the Soviets who were in Latvia. And the Soviets were fighting back, and the German Luftwaffe, the Air Force, and they were bombing the city here, and they did terrible damage here. The Soviets put their anti-aircraft guns in the tower of St. Peter's Church, right behind me, thinking that the Germans are good Lutherans, and they would never dare to bomb their own churches, their own cathedral. But of course, that didn't matter to the Nazis. They would bomb anybody. And so they bombed St. Peter's Church. And at the same time, they destroyed the Blackhead houses. And they destroyed the City Hall and many of the other buildings around here. Everything was reduced to rubble. And that was the Nazis bombing Riga. They were bombed in 41, but in 1948, the Soviets just completely removed all the rubble. And then in 1997, they began to rebuild it. In 99, Blackhead houses opened again. Now, for some reason, the Soviets began to rebuild St. Peter's Church in the early 50s. Well, behind me is a knight in armor, because in the Middle Ages, knights were very important and popular here. But this particular knight, his name was Roland, not Lancelot from the tales of King Arthur, but Roland, who was a French knight from the reign of the Emperor Charlemagne. And he was a very brave man, and several times he risked his life to protect the Emperor Charlemagne, and eventually gave his life in protecting the Emperor. All of such buildings also had a mascot, so to speak, and it was a knight, and so the Blackheads chose Roland. And in the English language, there are songs, old Middle Ages songs, that celebrate the bravery of Roland. Now, if you go inside the building, you will see full knights' armors. And the square itself was a place where there actually were competitions between knights and jousting and horses and all of that stuff that you would see in movies represented, let's say, in the Shakespearean age or earlier in the Arthur age around, let's say, the 11th century in England. My name is Charles Kelley, and this is my Riga, and I hope that you come and visit one day. I'll be happy to see you and take you on a personal walking tour.